All right, the last division here, the NFC South, the worst division in football. We'll start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Projected win total was 7.5. You went over, I went under. So they end up winning 10 games. They go 10-7. What did you see about this team? What did you get right?
No, I mean, I thought Baker played pretty consistently the year before, and I thought that was going to carry over into this year. I think you predicted some slight regression from him, but he played. I think he played just as well, if not better, this year. They
Bro,
kept
he
they
went
kept
nuts. He
he
went
went nuts,
insane.
right? He went insane, right? Okay, so he went even he played
4,500
even better.
yards,
Let's hear it.
41 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, which I think is reasonable, and it throw in another 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, he went crazy.
He went insane. So he exceeded what I thought he was going to do. I thought he was going to be pretty good this year and keep that play up. He did even better than that. I think that was the difference, right? Their defense is, I want to say, it was probably average, probably somewhere around like 16 to 20. So I think that was like Baker. I don't know. Baker's found his home. He's playing well. He's good for him. He was a bit of a douchebag on the Browns to start his career, but I'm glad I'm actually happy for his redemption story now. Like he seems to have turned it around. Even like, I don't know, maybe it was just like he was just being like, because of his play, he's being more extra like douchey. But now like he seems like he's like pretty decent guy now. Like I don't know, like maybe his play and his how he acts on off the field is connected. And I'm sure it's connected for a lot of players, but like it's a good turnaround for Baker Mayfield, and he's doing well with the Bucks.
Yeah, that swag and attitude he has, it works when you're winning. When you're losing, it's like you're just being annoying. But yeah, I was wrong. I definitely did not expect him to go insane like this and have an MVP caliber season, all pro type season, even though he didn't make the Pro Bowl. And there's just a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFC, so he was on the outside looking in. But yeah, defense was bang average. They were 16th. A lot of weapons. They obviously missed Chris Godwin, but Mike Evans is still there. Kate Otten was there for a long time. Bucky Irving went. He also went crazy. Stole the job from Rashad White. He had a couple costly fumbles, but one of the best rookie running backs, one of the best running backs in the NFC this year. And they lost a few games in the middle of the season that were really fluky. They had the overtime game against Atlanta where Irving lost that fumble. They lose in overtime to Kansas City where they didn't even touch the ball. So there's a case or a season where they go 12-5, and we're having a different conversation about them. So credit to Tampa and Baker, and I'm really glad he's succeeding while Cleveland is failing because I'm a Browns hater or a City of Cleveland hater, and they had their franchise quarterback and they let him go for Deshaun Watson. So we'll get to the Browns next. The Atlanta Falcons over under was 9.5. They go under by a game and a half. You went over, I went under. What did you get wrong about this team?
Yeah, Kirk Cousins was not quite the answer there. And I think they maybe realized that a little bit later into this, like the last 2 games of the season. They're like, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't be playing Kirk Cousins. I think their offense was not great. It was just okay. Even though they had some talented guys like Bijan Robinson, like started killing it towards the end. He was struggling in the beginning. Drake London had some pretty good games, but then like I don't know, Kirk Cousins had a really weird season. Defense was, I want to say, about average. They weren't as good as anticipated. I do think if they played Michael Penix Jr., they would have had a they might have had 2 more wins if they started played them maybe like halfway through the season instead of the last 2-3 games down the stretch here.
They did have a really weird season. They started hot. Kirk looked great, almost. He had like a 5 touchdown game against Tampa. They beat the Eagles in the last second. At one point, they were 6-3, and then I think the physicality got to Kirk, and he just wasn't able to hold up. And they lost a bunch of games. I think they went on a 5-game losing streak, and they start Penix the last 3 games of the season trying to save it. He goes 1-2, but I think he looked really good in that 1-2 stretch. Which I mean, they lost to Washington and they lost to Carolina the last game of the season, but the game didn't really matter once Tampa won, so I wouldn't really hold that against him. So I'm with you. If they started him like week 10, I think they probably would have won this division and made the playoffs. So I mean, tough break for them, but at least they have their franchise quarterback, I think. So we kind of clowned them for the pick, but they just pick Michael Penix, don't sign Kirk Cousins to
Yeah, yeah.
$150
We found him
million
because of
contract.
yeah, because they gave Cousins a bunch of money and then they drafted a guy number 8 overall.
They probably could have just signed, I don't know, name a veteran quarterback, Andy Dalton,
Yeah.
and they could have had the same result where they're 500 at the middle of the season, and then you hand the reins over to Penix, and they wouldn't have this crazy situation where they owe this dude a bunch of money. But it's not my problem. All right, the Carolina Panthers. Their projected win total was 5.5. They go under by half a game, going 5-12. We both went under on this team. I think we were both right. So what did we get right about this team?
Yeah, I think we basically said, hey, they're gonna struggle still on offense. They're gonna defense is not great, and that's kind of what it is. Bryce Young did struggle very early on. He got benched for Andy Dalton for a few games, and then comes back in and starts killing it towards the end of the season. So definitely exciting times for the Panthers ahead, right? It looks like Bryce Young is a franchise quarterback maybe, and they got some weapons to go with him. They're probably going to draft another weapon here in this draft, build on that defense. So I think the future is decent for the Panthers in the next couple of years. Canales is looks like a pretty good offensive coach, and he somehow turned around Bryce Young. Like everyone's like, what are you doing? Why does Bryce Young look so bad? And then you bench him, and then he turns it around, and it's like, oh wow, this guy's a genius, right? So, let's see what the future holds for Bryce Young. I think the Panthers go in whatever direction Bryce Young goes.
Yeah, he finished the season last 3 weeks. He only started 12 games. Last 3 weeks, he had 7 touchdowns, no picks, and in general was running a little bit more, so showing off some of that athleticism. I mean, he's not like a Kyler Murray level athlete, but he is slippery. And as long as he's not taking those big shots, I think he can, use his legs. So I think they answered the big question: is there a potential future with Bryce Young? And for a while, it looked like they were going to get the number 1 pick, and now I think they're picking 8th. So they're out of the quarterback sweepstakes. I think they're like, okay, we have this guy under a rookie contract at least for 2 more years. Let's see where we can go. And I think the future maybe is not super bright, but at least it's not as gloomy as it was. They had the quarterback question answered at least. Last, the New Orleans Saints. Projected line was 7.5. You went under. I went over. They ended up going 5-12. So what did you get right about this team?
I mean, I think I got right. I did tell you that Derek Carr's going to miss some games, and that's what he did, right? He missed some games. Alvin Kamara missed some games. I think their defense wasn't great. They got shredded a couple of times. People wanted Spencer Rattler to begin the season, and then they saw Spencer Rattler and like, bring back Derek Carr. So I don't know what the Saints' plan is here, but obviously Carr is not in a place anymore where he's going to be like, he could be a bridge guy. I don't think he's going to be like the future of that franchise. So they got to figure out what's their quarterback plan after Carr. They got to figure out what are, like, Olave has a major concussion like history now. So that's another guy you kind of like have to worry about. Defense doesn't look great. So I don't know. The Saints are kind of in shambles, and I mean, maybe they move on from Derek Carr, right? Because like probably unfair to keep that guy around for what's going to be looking like a rebuild.
Yeah, there's a big possibility. He has 2 more years on his deal. Saints Reddit is alive with talk of releasing him and what the impact would be. So it's possible that they do that and he ends up somewhere else. I think it's similar to the Niners. They kind of had a season from hell. They go 5-5 with Carr and 0-7 without him. So you fall a couple games short of your over/under, and he's missing 7 games. Maybe he wins 3 of those, and you end up hitting. So I think in the long run, it's probably better for them that they went 5-12. They get a top 10 pick. Maybe they decide, okay, we can move on. We'll get a new head coach. Yeah, they fired Dennis Allen halfway through the season, and he was awful. They fired him after losing to Carolina when he made a horrible decision to punt on 4th and short when they could have won the game. So we don't need to get into details there, but yeah, they lose Olave, they lose Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill halfway through the season. I think he only plays half the season. Kamara gets hurt at the end, but at that point, it's a one-man show. So they did have a similar to the Niners, where they had a season from hell with injuries, but obviously without the expectations of the Niners. So that's it for the NFC. Say biggest surprise and biggest disappointment for you.
I'll go biggest surprise, Minnesota Vikings. just because we did not expect them to come out and kill it. Biggest disappointment, you know it, Khaled, the Niners. No one could have predicted what happened to them, so I will stick by that. That's the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, just to be different, I'll go with Washington as the biggest surprise for me because,
sure. Yeah.
Minnesota, you could have talked yourself into some kind of scenario like, oh, maybe if Darnold is great, they could be good. But Washington, I didn't think we saw a path. We thought even if Jaden Daniels was really good, they would still be, kind of a middling team, but they end up being, one of the better teams in the NFL and win 12.